Agatha Christie is a very responsible citizen. She was always trying to show to everybody she was the one on whom can be relied all the time. This was also the case with her family, which she supported till her very end. She participated in many public duties, such as working as a nurse during the World War One. Sorry. She was a person of the old deontic generation, from the leaders who had the sense of duty. We all remembered this extinguished human category during the funeral of the British Queen. That was the generation of people who indeed didn't do everything just for themselves, or they did by doing something useful for the broader social imagery of the cultural environment they were living in. One can assume that the crisis like the one in Ukraine could have been avoided if there were more leaders who were more deontic, not only business or career oriented. And now everybody is talking about the cultural wars. We can assume that by associating the new business models with the new communication technologies, one can defend his or hers or entity's culture, even if consisting of some dangerous elements, by saying this is my culture, my geography, my matter. Of course, that everything and everyone should have sovereignty, but now exactly those new communication technologies made transparent the issues which were practically invisible during Miss Christie's time, such as exemplum gratia, the ecological issues, namely destroying the planet's ecosystem, cannot be considered as an issue of one country only. In this sense, the writer was very much before her time, tackling the issues hidden behind the veil of culture, such as those of the exotic location, for which the critic was always claiming they were chosen for the sole reason of attracting the audience hungry for adventure and escapism. The culture of the author was also corresponding with the culture of the readers in many ways. Unlike her sister, who was critically acclaimed writer, played in West End, reviewed and published in the respectable journals, Agatha was always writing in short sentences using the simple but not low English, always using same words. The digital analysis of her writings indicates she was always using the same technique, form and vocabulary, and from her first published novel, which took 5 years to be published, unlike all other British writers. In addition to this, she always was tending to write a book with less words, which in the sense of the musicality of the language is bringing her closer to Shakespeare. However, Shakespeare was also experimenting with the words and idioms, creating new morphemes and syntaxes, or reusing the old ones by giving them new meaning or contextualizing them in an ambiguous manner, which is not the case with Agatha Christie. All this means she did all her books the way she did her first one. In this way, she kept her audience and was enlarging it because they knew they will get what they wanted and expected from her. In other words, they won't be disappointed when they buy her book. All analysts agree this was the way she became so bankable, but at the same time she was very influential, which was possible through the usage of the cultural stereotypes which she used for different cultural identities: religious, ethnic, class, educational, etc. The critics, which are not in favor of her, claim she was using the prejudicial cultural phenomena in a sense that her general cultural impact was negative because she was bipolarizing and strengthening the prejudicial cultural models. They were more in favor of some authors which were presenting ideas of the possible cultural equality or re-evaluation of the cultural difficulties, which was typical for the writers of after the World War II period. However, everybody agrees that this is another quality of Christie's prose which brought her closer to the wider mainstream audiences. Because she wasn't idealizing and modernizing the cultural stereotypes, but was presenting them exactly as they were in their reality. The author of these lines doesn't think she was promoting regressive, lucrative for her self-influence because there are theories which support her way of the cultural salvation model, which is by presenting the reality exactly as it is, so that its negativities will be transparently visible, unlike in the gloomy before and after the World War II European media sphere. What she did is actually one of the oldest plot theories, the one from the Aristotle's reality catharsis theory. Her strong cultural influence in after the World War II period is undeniable. She was always referred as one in support of the positive social and democratic values and strengthening the policies of the public eye. That she was culturally hunted, so to speak, and considered very influential, we can assume from the way she gave her rare interviews. It seems they were chasing her all the time, but she could run away from them. Although she believed in the policies of the public eye, she usually avoided them. However, in those rare interviews, we can see some of those journalists managed to catch her in paparazzi manner, such as while being on. Author's harsh, speculative, revealing eye doesn't stop at the simple cultural stereotypes, such as to those in which Balkanians are the filthy, irresponsible, atavistic inhabitants of the European Southeast, the part closest to the neighboring semi-barbaric Asian cultural milieu. Agatha Christie is immersing even deeper in the established cultural modalities, or in the ignorable culture of the establishment, especially in the cultural heritage which is considered as cradle of the Western civilization, but perhaps only in geographical sense originates from Asia, such as the spirituality, foremost Christianity, but also the networking, including the secretive, conspicuous organizing, which can be perceived as some of those stories of the conspiracies of the secret societies. By this, Miss Christie is in many ways predicting the hypocrisy, the collective blindnesses in the public sphere in Europe, such as those in Nazism or communism. She doesn't deny that the Western citizens and entities are also very susceptible to those atavistic, primitive cultural modalities, especially when corrupted. This is very evident in the novel Murder on the Orient-Express. Western forces can also develop conspiracy in an atavistic manner as the ones from the East. Actually, the modality of the Nazism, hypocrisy, is our strongest weapon, as quote usually attributed to Joseph Goebbels, and that the war can be described as the well-prepared theatrical play in which everyone plays his role for his interest, not to fight for better civilization, is a base for the plot in Murder in the Orient Express. When in need for money or revenge, Western players can play by the Balkanized rules. No wonder this novel is located in the heart of Balkans. The vampire-like strong struggle, typical for the region of Southeast Europe, is depicted through the manner of acting of the family members, while the only set design of this theater of the Western civilization is the luxurious train, which symbolizes the rich, the civilized West, as opposed to the Balkan culture where everything could be relativized. However, the novel of Orient-Express, as its screen adaptation, proves that the powerful Europeans also tend to relativize the values. In academic sense, this is very important to be underlined, since European Union criticized the hybrid political models in the Eastern countries. Yet these elements also occur in the same intensity in the so-called cool oldest democracies in the world, or the Western European states. The plot of the novel is very similar in metaphorical manner to the current situation in European Union, which is the entity which doesn't keep its high standards, which is considered to be emblematic for the Western culture. For example, George Soros says, everybody who wants to achieve something in European Union must acquire it through dealing with its incompetent bureaucracy. Indeed, lately the politics of relativizing everything is becoming very visible in European Union. Perhaps this is why the new productions based in Christie's prose are so successful at the cinema box office, especially the one directed by Kenneth Branagh. The Sidney Lumet's adaptation is certainly considered one of the most successful adaptations of the literary make. If we apply the same methodology as we did with the writer, we can say that the director Sidney Lumet was pretty much on the same line. He was somebody sharing the same worldview, the one after the World War II. However, for the director, we can say he wanted to make influence, which we can see through many of his public statements, while for the writer, we cannot find any statement of this sort. The film itself is as like trying to provide the wholesome picture of the book, while of course trying to catch up with the attention of the viewer. This is one of the attempts of these dominantly, let's say, cult or artistic East Coast film and theater directors. Sidney Lumet never lived in Hollywood. That is why they say he never got an Oscar, only the live achievement one. However, with this production, he was trying to make something more or less commercial. In other words, he was trying to enter the mainstream. So this film of his is not so thought-provoking as his network, but is a calm, polished costume drama. However, the main reason why I choose this screen adaptation is the relationship of the film authors with the cultural layers presented in the novel. Undoubtedly, as somebody with descent from Eastern Europe, being part of the Kaufman Jean Vigo legacy, in other words, being with the ones which were fighting the European persecutions, we can assume he was their kindred spirit. His interviews are promoting him as a serious craftsman, having a critical eye, as the one trying to see the worst in everything, which means he was like the mother of the writer, which was used as a role model for the character of Miss Marple. So in this case, the cinematic author is more a detective trying to define the layers of culture presented in the novel, or is trying to redefine them or correct them. In the novel, there is no amplification of the cultural diversity in a relation East-West, nor dictatorship democracy, therefore no relation between the general location and the Western European cultures. The director had a standpoint as somebody who was well acquainted with the persecutions of the artists from various parts of Europe, mainly from Eastern and those which were in life-threatening position due to the Nazism. Of course, this is the case with the other authors from this film. If we analyze the entire opus of the director, we can also see that he was trying to gather around him same of those with his beliefs. Intentionally or not, in this film, the region of Southeast Europe is depicted as a place where traditionally these kinds of family conspiracies could only happen. The Balkan people are susceptible to corruption, dehumanization, trying to avoid the hardships of life by putting blame on others. This is somewhat a stereotype for the Southeast Europeans in the West. As an outcome of this, the ones who are usually blamed for everything are the minorities, who due to the atrocities done to them had to leave Europe. Many of them went to Hollywood, usually the Jews, where they became a very successful part of the film industry. That Mr. Lumet was fighting for better future of our world, not just working, we can see from some of his productions and from his comments about blacklisting. He believed very much in denuclearization. He couldn't find any film producer for his Day After, which is about nuclear war. He made it as a TV production, which was also screened as a film in selected theaters, mostly in Europe. Of course, now we can all mule about the possible influence and tension with this mainstream production, whose producer is relative with the British Queen. However, if we take a better look, we can disguise that most of the cast and crew members are of left political provenience. Hence, everybody now and then was speaking of the Red Hollywood. The main purpose of this article is to enlighten certain cultural aspects of this production, in a sense how they were, due to the cultural stereotypes incorporated in it, perceived in different parts of the world. The author of this alliance remembers that in regard of its cultural standpoints, this production received negative critical response in former Yugoslavia, since it was considered as a bird-eye view over the primitive Balkan cultural landscape. However, we cannot be sure this was a professional reviewing, since the communist government was hugely controlling the press and the entire cultural life. Furthermore, the Western Marxists, such as those supposedly working on this production, were considered as reform communists, renamed as post-structuralists. They weren't really welcomed in the Yugoslav cultural environment, although they were visiting this Balkan country often and had many friends among the local artists and politicians. I chose the second production, the one of Kenneth Branagh, just to use it as a comparison with the previous one. In a sense, how the cultural layers can disappear when producing strictly mainstream production without placing much artistic content. The screenplay writer is a big intellectual with a heavy diploma, Michael Green. However, it is more likely that he, as well as the director, was in need of money rather than artistic recognition when making this production. So the artistic result was according to me very low. We certainly cannot speak about any cultural issues in this expensive but one-dimensional production, which only with only professional qualities can be the luminescent cinematography, the digital picture upgrade, the production, and the costume design. For your attention.